Hey, hi, hello friends, and welcome back. You remember when I said, I'm gonna make more videos, that's what I'm gonna do in the new year? No. But I am here with my January wrap-up. I read 22 books in January, which, I mean, sounds a bit insane, but I was on vacation for part of it. And what I've started to do is keep my own sort of independent stats. So not on basically on genre, audience, and whether the author is a Black, Indigenous, or person of color, and whether or not the book features LGBTQIA plus characters, because it's very difficult to tell if the author themselves is. So, let's go through some stats. That makes me so happy. I might come up with some kind of graphics or something to put up here, but so I read 4 contemporary novels, which I don't even really know what contemporary is. It's a whole thing. I read 6 fantasies, 1 historical fiction, which honestly was very surprising that I even read 1 at all, 1 mystery, 3 nonfictions, 4 romances, and 3 thrillers. So honestly, across the genres, pretty sort of, I would say mixed. That's fairly, I would say that's a fair amount of sort of diversity in there. So I read 16 books that I would classify as adult, 1 middle grade, and then 5 YA, which usually I would say YA is more sort of like my thing, but since I've been reading more romance books, those tend to skew more towards adult. And I read 4 books by male authors and 18 books by female authors. And I think it's just, the market is kind of saturated when it comes to female authors, but, whatever. This month I read 10 books by Black, Indigenous, or people of color, and that means that I read 22 that were not. So I was hoping to be closer to 50-50 or higher. I think I'm standing at 10 divided by 22? I'm at like 45% right now, which is not bad, but I think that it could be better. Of the books that I read, 11 of them, so exactly half, featured LGBTQIA plus characters. Those are my stats for the month of January. I'm hoping to sort of keep this going in the months to come, but yeah, so now I'll scoot back to my little corner. This has been Stats Time with Em Reads Books. I, this year at least, have sort of been struggling a little bit with my rating system. Basically, I used to give 5 stars to everything, and so I think for this wrap-up, I'm just going to be talking about the 5-star books that I read in January. I'm very picky now, I think, when it comes to 5-star books. So let's see how many I have. So out of the 22 books that I read, only 9 of them were 5 stars. So that's pretty solid. And hopefully if it's 5 stars, then I'll remember it. The first 5-star book that I read in January was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And it's to no one's surprise that I liked this book. And by liked, I mean freaking loved. Just because of the concept of a book of regrets and sort of being able to see how things would have changed if you had done things differently. And that's a concept that I really like in books, especially because the moral of the story generally is, don't let regrets keep you from living your life. And sort of the idea of a library at the end of the universe is another sort of, it's becoming a trope almost, but it is something that I really like in the books that I read. Next is The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. And to say that I love her and that I love her books is an understatement, but this book is seriously just phenomenal. So we're following Shay and Dominic, 2 people who work at a public radio station, and Shay absolutely hates Dominic. She thinks that he's annoying, that he mentions his master's degree entirely too much, and just like he gets on her every last nerve. So she comes up with this idea for a new public radio segment because they're sort of, they're always looking for new segments. And it's about two exes who are giving relationship advice. But the issue is that her station manager wants her and Dominic to do it, and her and Dominic never dated. Now, admittedly, based on the banter that they have, it's believable enough that they have. So they do it. And as you know, right, this is a combination of enemies to lovers as well as fake dating, because it's like fake exes. And in the end that they're gonna fall in love, but the entire sort of storyline here is amazing. I loved every minute of it, and like I cannot wait to read more books by her. The next 5-star read that I read was Slay by Brittany Morris. And this is just an amazing book about celebrating Blackness and creating sort of safe spaces for Blacks. And that it follows a game developer, Kiera, and she has developed basically this sort of card game, virtual reality video game that is taking the world by storm. And she runs into issues when people begin accusing her game of being racist, which it's not, and when a young Black man is murdered because of the game. And this is really something that I could imagine sort of happening today. And that realism and the commentary that it makes on society today was something that really just stuck with me, as well as just the vivid descriptions of the game itself were so immersive and wonderful. Next, I read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Abram X. Kendi, which I have sort of started in my head at least doing a little bit of a monthly buddy read, just sort of trying to just how to be a better ally to Black, Indigenous people of color, as well as anyone on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, and even sort of towards those who have disabilities. And so obviously I'm not perfect, but I am sort of trying to work on this aspect, and this is a fundamentally just perfect book for that. I generally, when I'm talking to people, I recommend that they read White Fragility first, because that book basically tells you to get over yourself, and it's what you need in order to be able to accurately sort of digest the content that is in this book. And so this talks about racism across basically across time, as well as the more subtle aspects of it, basically including sort of like classism and sexism and homophobia within the sort of concept of race itself as well. And this, like, it's a hard book to read. Like, it's a hard topic to read about, but it's completely necessary and just a wonderful book. For the love of God, Stitch, stop eating your sister's food! I'm back. But this book is eye-opening, at least it was for me, and is sort of a great start on this journey. Next is We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry, which is a amazing historical fiction novel about a field hockey team who basically, they believe that they have signed themselves off to the devil in order to win the state championship. And it alternates in, oh my god, Stitch, stop. It alternates points of view between all of the members of the team, and you get a fundamental understanding of what they each respectively were going through in the 1980s. And this book does not shy away from issues of racism and homophobia and religion, but it also couples it with the fact that they're basically worshiping a notebook with Emilio Estevez on the cover. So it balances all of those deep and heavy issues with a lot of humor. And I think that this book is just an angsty adult novel about sisterhood and teamwork and a little bit of the occult. My next 5-star read was The Silvered Serpents by Roshani Chokshi. And you know, what I said at the beginning of the month was that, you know, I heard that this had made people cry. And while I did not cry because I have no heart, I understand why. So, this book, guys, this book. All we have done is just continue upping the stakes and upping the stakes in between all of the books. And we're dealing with sort of the sadness left over from the ending of the first book. Mild spoilers. And then, like, no one in this group is good at dealing with their emotions, so it's just a bunch of angst and sadness and anger the entire time. But it still had puzzles, it still had a good plot. I figured out sort of what was gonna happen, but hi Siri. But I'm not gonna fault it for that. I am really excited to read The Bronzed Beasts when that comes out, so that this series will finally be over and I can just like move on with my life. Next, I read The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, and it was so good. Basically, we're picking up where we left off in the last book. The original war has ended, and man, it sucks to be Rin right now. Rin is having a rough time. And so when she is approached with the idea of basically holding a coup, she's kind of down for it. And we're following her through this process. This is, I would say, it's far less gory than the first book. And is able to sort of have great tension and speed from the get-go. I know that a lot of people's main sort of complaints about the Poppy War is that you spend like 200 pages at school learning how to do war. And in this book, you're doing the war and the strategic elements of it just immediately, and it was a far faster read for me. Despite it being longer, I don't know. But you also get to sort of delve into the characters' backstories more, the side characters, and it was just so good. I think that in February, I can't say that. I think that in March, once I get through, I have a huge backlog of like physical books and NetGalley books that I need to read. Then I think that I'm gonna buddy read The Burning God with Dan, because we are both really excited for it. Second to last, but not least by any means, is The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichak, which I would recommend this to anyone who loves mythology, and especially if you liked Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology. So this follows Angerboda, the first wife of Loki, through her journey of sort of discovering her witchness, her falling in love slowly with Loki, and the consequences of that lead up to Ragnarok. And this follows the Norse mythos very closely, I would say, and it weaves in other tales, such as how Thor got his hammer and how certain characters were born. But it's far more interesting because it's being told from the perspective of a character that I don't think that we really get to hear from. And the sort of amount of emotion that I was feeling for Angerboda and her children throughout this entire book, it was just like nothing I've ever read. And I think quite possibly that this is my favorite book that I read in January, but I don't know. And finally, the last book that I read in January that I would give 5 stars to is I Want to Be Where the Normal People Are by Rachel Bloom. Rachel Bloom is the creator of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a TV show that I love. I was seriously obsessed with it over the summer. And she brings the same humor and sort of musicality from that show to this book. I listened to the audiobook specifically because, like, how could I not? It's a memoir about Rachel Bloom's life written by Rachel Bloom. Like, listen to the audiobook. Duh. And there were times that I was sort of just laughing out loud. Her tone in this is exactly what I expected that it would be. And you get to hear about her sort of journey with bullying and OCD and just sort of what show business was like for her as a woman. And it was just refreshing and light, despite all of the sort of dark and hard things that she was discussing. I couldn't help but sort of, right down in front, move your butt. Thank you. I couldn't help but sort of enjoy it. And I think that if you are a fan of her and what she does, you will absolutely love this book like I did. So that's my January wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed. Go ahead and let me know in the comments what your favorite book that you read in January was. And keep reading.